commencement speeches should be given to students not on their graduation day, but on their first day of class. I think we've all seen it, but if you haven't, please feel free to watch Steve Jobs' commencement speech to the graduating students of Stanford. It's one of the best things out there to listen to on YouTube that can change your outlook on life for the better. Hearing his story of being adopted, of being ousted in his own company that he built, of having cancer and surviving it. It's his story about his life and the struggles he's gone through, and even seeing the positive things why these supposedly negative things had to happen to him. And he even stated that getting fired by his own company, Apple, was one of the best things that could have ever happened to him. Because if you didn't know, after a couple of years Apple wanted him back as CEO, and he revolutionized the technology we still use today on our smartphones. My friend Lester was the one who pointed me to this speech of Steve, and he added, "You don't need to go to college once you hear it." And so I did watch it, and boy, did it change my perspective in life and how I see things, of connecting the dots backward and not forwards. Sometime later I also saw some other commencement speeches. I saw Conan O'Brien's speech at Dartmouth, which was very funny, given that he's a comedian, and one of my all-time favorite creative people, the godfather of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, Dollhouse and Firefly, and the director of the first Avengers film, Joss Whedon. It wasn't as inspiring as Steve Jobs, nor as funny as Conan's, but what he said spoke to me. He's kind of a weirdo, but the good kind in my book, and he uses that as his superpower, being able to see things from a different perspective, and showing it to people and people finding it very interesting. If you haven't seen Buffy or Firefly, you won't get what I mean, but suffice it to say, it's pretty different and groundbreaking at the time. If Steve Jobs can be remembered by the iPhone, Joss Whedon can be summed up as being the brainchild of the MCU. Well, technically it was Kevin Feige, but if it wasn't for Whedon, we wouldn't have gotten Avengers to Infinity War, and Endgame, you know why. That Thanos post-credits scene from the Avengers was all Joss Whedon. Thanos made his MCU debut in the Avengers, 2012, and it was Joss Whedon's idea to include Thanos in the film, as his only instructions from Kevin Feige were that the film's villain should be aliens, and the rest was up to Whedon. Him being comic book readers like most of us nerds are, we really would love a big bad like Thanos in our lifetime to be seen on the big screen, and we weren't expecting it, but when the Mad Titan's evil grin showed up in that post-credits scene, us nerds went wild, and the MCU was never the same. And just look at the first Avengers film and compare it to all the MCU films that came before and after that, and you will notice a formula in comedic timing. That's another of Joss Whedon's influences in the MCU among many others. Also, when Whedon was asked in an interview which Avengers comics he read while preparing for directing and writing the first movie, his answer was, all of them. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked. In his speech, Joss Whedon said these two things. To accept duality is to earn identity. Don't just be yourself, be all of yourself. I remember listening to his speech and wishing that I should have heard it when I was still in my freshman year. I think it would have helped me a lot, not just because Joss is one of my idols, but because what he said rang true to me, that I could have been myself all along, with my art and poetry, and was never ashamed of it, even though nobody in class was doing it the same way I did, or tackling the same subjects I was interested in. So it made me think that these commencement speeches are more useful to freshman students, given that they will ground them as well as inspire them and accept how different they are from other people, and that's okay too. As I said, my friend told me that Steve Jobs' commencement speech would be enough to not go to college, and hey, if you don't have the money or time, I think these speeches will be helpful, but I think for the most part, my friend was exaggerating, of course. Instead, however, I propose to have these kinds of speeches shown to freshman students who are just starting college. They might course correct their, course, or maybe completely abandon school. I guess that's why colleges only show or invite people when they are about to graduate, but all kidding aside, students may learn a thing or two of real value. That doesn't directly connect to their chosen course, or maybe it does, but what's the harm in that? Students are starving for knowledge, for wisdom, and our professors know exactly where to get them and who to talk to, so that they can share their knowledge as guest speakers. Please don't do it only at the end of the line after 4 years of learning minor and major subjects. Let's begin with this, all through the 4 years, invite a speaker once or twice a semester, and encourage students or even teachers to watch these speeches. They don't even need to be commencement speeches. They can be Les Brown's motivational talk on not giving up. They could be an inspiring video about Casey Neistat's approach to filming. It can be a documentary about Alan Moore's comic book characters, and how he's been a magician. Or you can also go with Grant Morrison's speeches, or Jim Rohn's talk Take Charge of Your Life. They're all quite interesting, and all of them are free to watch on YouTube. Anything is better than nothing, and we might not get the attention of students right away, but once or twice, we might get them to listen if we listen to them about what they're interested to learn.